Welcome to another episode of Carole Tuesday, week 21 out of 24 or 26. We don't really know yet. At most, we have a few weeks left till the show is completely over. And people have started making their videos about the show, I guess to cash in on the Netflix release, to cash in on the fact that, more people are going to be talking about it now that it's coming to the last couple of episodes, which is when most people talk about shows, I guess. So we're going to see a lot more Carole Tuesday related content. So maybe I'll, get a chance to look at some of those videos as we go with that and maybe talk about how, people perceive the show outside of just me, because I haven't really watched any other videos or any other reactions about what people think about the show. So I'm kind of completely in the dark on this. I've just had my opinion so far, but from what I've seen, it seems to be relatively positive. So I guess we'll have a bone to pick with the community then when it comes out, and people will throw dislikes at me all over again. Nothing I'm not used to at this point, I guess. Not trying to be overly negative. Without further ado, let's get started with episode 21. So this episode starts off with kind of where we left off last episode, with Angela's guardian having a heart attack or something and being transported to the hospital, and we finally saw it hit her, what actually happened, because she was kind of in a daze last episode. And then we have Carole Tuesday, they're preparing for their Grammy performance. It's interesting to note that the show chose to use Grammy straight up without even trying to mince words. They just picked Grammy instead of Vammy or whatever, kind of weird, like when they have McDonald's instead of McDonald's in the anime shows usually. They try to mix it up to avoid getting copyrighted, but this show has been kind of on the nose with some of the references that it uses, which is strange because sometimes when it talks about artists, it doesn't use their real names. They have characters in the show that are kind of alluding to certain artists in the real world without actually mentioning them by name. For example, apparently the rapper in last episode was the rap was done by Denzel Curry. Now, I never said the actual rapping was bad. I just thought the lyrics were really bad, which the lyrics were really bad. Go look at that. I'm pretty sure he didn't write those lyrics. I think he was just asked to rap them, which Denzel Curry is a fine rapper. I'm no problem with him at all. I just thought the lyrics were struggle bars from beginning to end. That being said, this episode, we might get to see exactly what they do with the album, because even though we met legendary producer Toby at some point in the past, he hasn't really been involved in any real sense. We haven't really seen him make any new songs with the girls other than them vaguely being in the studio for a couple of short takes. The last couple of episodes really haven't been focusing on them much at all. It focused on Carole's friendship with that a rapper guy, Ezekiel, and then it kind of focused on Angela a lot last episode, or the episode before that rather. So we kind of getting back to the Carole Tuesday basics now. Only 3 episodes to go. Maybe we'll end with the Grammy performance. That'll be the big thing, and them winning Best New Artist. But where do we go from there? Who knows? Those cages in that hall right there have to be a visual metaphor or reference to the cages that they have in the ICE facilities in the US that made such a big deal earlier this year. I don't know the exact production schedule, but I feel like they could fit in a little art change if it meant referencing something in the real world that the director really wanted to talk about. It's also pretty cool that Shinichiro is sticking very close to maybe real world references. There have been a couple in the past, specifically with the refugee crisis and with him getting deported, and they're taking it in a way that makes it seem more like Earth is kind of this kind of backwards, poverty-struck planet, and Mars is kind of this more affluent planet. Or even that need not necessarily be the case. It's just that there's more opportunity on Mars, maybe because people want to go there, and people are on their way to Mars. And this guy, just happened to overstay his visa, which is apparent. This is actually the most common way that people are illegal immigrants in the U.S. It's not by crossing the border; it's by coming in legally and then just overstaying your visa. So that was a nice little touch that they added there. And these cages, if you look up the videos, you can find them on YouTube, probably CNBC or whatever, of when they had the Mexican people who tried to cross the border, when they picked them up and gave them those aluminum space blankets or whatever, they have them detained in similar fenced cages like this. I just thought that was a cool visual reference. Yo, okay, so this identity crisis came out of nowhere, and she wasn't even thinking about this before, but if we're going to get this as a subplot, I'm not going to object. We're kind of getting into the doldrums, preparing for that final performance there. So if they want to toss us a bone and have some kind of side plot where Angela discovers her true identity, I'm not going to say no to that. That being said, this is my call for what she is. Maybe she's some kind of like synthetic human, like replicant type thing. That's my call for what it's going to be. That could also maybe explain why the AI is so similar to her, but that's a different thing maybe. It would be really cool if she was a robot and she became one because her mom couldn't have children or something like that. That might be a nice little like Black Mirror touch, cherry on top of the sundae just to wrap things up. That's my call. Doesn't really have to be that way, but it could be that way, definitely. That was a really weird place to cut that scene. We cut in on them being around the Christmas tree, and like 20 seconds later, we cut out. This goes back to my overall critique that I have of the show, that it's called Carole Tuesday, but very little about the show has to do with Carole Tuesday, which would work if we didn't treat them like the main characters. But there are times when we randomly have to watch events or go to concerts just because they're involved in them, even though there's no build up or no like story tension that gets released through them performing. The Sidonia Fest performance a couple of episodes ago was like a really good example of that. They just randomly were called for this performance, and it's a good way to wrap up that circular like storyline of them being on the stage and not getting to perform the first time around. But then this time it's like, shouldn't there have been more build up? There should have been like a montage of them killing themselves practicing. There should be some kind of like tension that could have been relieved by them having a good performance there. And especially after Angela performed and kind of blew everyone away, we just cut to them performing. There was no like anxious like couple of moments that we steal with them in between the performances that might have given it more character. And even this, I think this Christmas scene is like perfectly reminiscent of that, is that we're in with them for like 10 seconds. We're like, oh, these are your main characters. This is what they're up to. And now for something completely different. And we're cutting to Valerie Simmons and everything else. It just feels like the show has too many balls in the air and it can't keep track of everything that it's trying to do all at once. And by juggling all these balls, we're not doing any one of them justice. Like if we are more involved in this Valerie Simmons thread, if we got more of that instead of just 2 minutes every episode or whatever, we would be more invested in that storyline. If we knew more about Carole Tuesday's album, like some specifics or some particular problem they were struggling with that they were then able to overcome by finding a creative solution, we would be more invested in their storyline. And if we knew something about Angela's identity crisis before she just randomly said, "Who am I?" like in episode 21 of a 26 episode show, we would be more invested in her storyline. It just feels like there's a lack of investment all around to me. Yeah, I mean, that's that. Let's see what Valerie Simmons is up to. That is the Angela content I wanted to see in the first place. I wanted to see her struggle with her fame. I wanted to see her struggle with substance abuse. Like, this is the stuff that I wanted to see 10, 12 episodes ago. Why are they only giving it to me now? I am extremely disappointed. Unless this is setting up some like large arc in season 2. This is just like poking me in the heart and being like, I know this is the stuff that you wanted. You see, we can actually do this stuff, but we're not going to give you as much of it as you wanted, just to spite you. I'm like, okay, show, if you want to do that, I mean, I have no choice but to watch you anyway, but I'm not going to like it. I'll tell you that much. I'm not going to like it. Yo, shout out to this dude. This guy has hustle on the next level. He's in jail and he's still making a music video. That's what I call next level dedication. Shout out to my boy Zeki. Clearly he's going to go places, best new artist or not. He's gonna get something because he has that hustle for real. I just realized there could be another possibility with the Angela storyline. It could also be that she's like a refugee or like illegal immigrant like Amer and Carole, and her mom brought her in from somewhere else because she couldn't have a child. I feel like that's where we're gonna go. But it could also be that she's synthetic. One of these two, I think, is going to be the payoff for this. With obviously the refugee one being more like kind of, like resonant emotionally, but she's never been against that really. So it doesn't really work in a sense of like, man's hubris type way or like ironic kind of way. It just works in the sense that that's kind of the theme of the show. But the whole robot thing would make more sense for her storyline, so I'm leaning towards that. But the refugee thing is also a possibility in my mind. One of those two. Or it could just be something completely mundane. We don't know with the show. See, this song is good. All the bars in this were pretty solid. And it's like pretty cool cadence and everything. I don't know what was up with that first verse. There was just like one line that maybe I picked on. I don't know. But this rap was way better than the previous one. The only maybe one bar I would pick on is the elephant line. But other than that, I mean, he made it in jail. You can't really be like, he made it in one day in jail too. And he scribbled all over the wall too. So he's got that Rain Man like rap thing going for him now. Okay, Amr, you've got me on your side. I admit, episode 21 rap was way better than episode 20 rap. Whatever, I'm on your side now. Let's hope you don't get deported. I don't think truer words have ever been spoken. Welcome to the real world, Tuesday. You don't get credit cards in your stocking out here. You don't get shit in your stocking out here. In fact, your stocking might burn down and take the tree with it out here. That's how it works usually. Nice to see the Tuesdays seeing how things are around here. Okay. Probably my favorite song of the show so far. Actually, the rap song was probably my second favorite. So my top two favorite songs of the show came in episode 21, which I think is a good thing for the show, because if it came in like episode 2 and we were just watching and waiting for nothing really exciting to happen, I think it would be for the worst. But this show is so flip-floppy in how it does things. Like in a moment it'll be like kind of mediocre, and then the next moment it'll be do something really cool, and then it'll go back to like doing something kind of weird, and then it'll do something really cool. The music has always been relatively okay in the show. This church organ inspired song, which when Tuesday had the last song written out in a notebook, I was like, this is not so subtle hint as like we're moving towards the end of the show. This might be one of the last songs that we get, and it just so happens that they're going to perform this show. Maybe they're going to perform this song at the Grammys, I guess. That would be really cool. If not, we'll see where they perform it. It's just a really cool, departure from their usual sound, which is like this lo-fi guitar and keyboard, by introducing this like Hans Zimmer church organ, extremely resonant, like spiritual, ambient feeling track that they have here. It was just a really cool addition to the show. I don't know thematically what it represents, and I don't know who just got out of the cab to come meet them, but really good addition to the show so far, and this episode so far has been pretty solid. We've been flitting back and forth a little bit too much for my liking, since the show kind of tends to like long takes and staying with the characters more, but we've been moving towards more of that shortcut style, and I'm fine with that in some sense, but we'll see how it goes as we move closer to the finale. I do want to stay with the characters and get that like character development, kind of those emotional scenes going again, but if not, I'll be fine. It's fine. Why is this so sudden? Like, up until last episode, she was perfectly fine. And as soon as her mom gets a heart attack, she devolves into this. Like, I get that what they're trying to show is like her mom was such a big part of her life, and like how she knew how to live, and like that was the structure that she had, the only real structure that she had, and the only real person that she could depend on. So when that mom is gone, she falls into this structureless void. But you don't just end up like swallowing 45 pills in your room in dark all alone, being haunted by hallucinations in one day. It doesn't just happen like that. There has to be some progression, which is why I would have liked to see her like, like a producer give her a pill a long time ago, be like, hey, are you tired? Like, take this, you'll have energy to record 5 more takes. And then like someone else give her a different pill, be like, oh, you can't sleep, take this or whatever. Like, I would have liked to see the build up, but she's been more or less the same character for 18, 19 episodes. And then last episode, her mom has a heart attack. And now in episode 21, we get this. Like, I'm the biggest fan of Angela as a character in the show so far. I like her more than Carole Tuesday. I've said that many times, because she's had to struggle with who she is as a person before, but that was more on a musical level and like an identity level, not like a who am I in relation to my lineage or my birth parents, or like why do I even exist? Why do I do music? She hasn't really had to deal with that at all, and for her to fall into this kind of dark pit, I feel like it just comes out of nowhere to me. I'm sure they're going to develop it in the next couple of episodes. My problem is more like the introduction of the whole issue that they're trying to tackle so late in the game. Like, maybe she should have taken some sleeping pills when she had a stalker. It could have been like she couldn't sleep because she was so worried, and then she started that. That was her like gateway into this. Anything because that's how it works in real life. You don't just one day find yourself surrounded by 80 pills. It's a slow process. You have to have a few entryways into the addiction for it to fully take over your life, or even for it to be a background. Like she could just be taking 1 or 2 pills a week, or like a couple times when she's stressed, and then when her mom falls out, she then has that to turn to. But now it seems like she just picked up a new hobby and went full bore into it over the course of like 48 hours or something. It's just a little unbelievable to me. So that was episode 21 of Carole Tuesday. We spent very little time with Carole Tuesday in this. The longest scene was when they saw Amar's performance on that phone back there. So technically we were with them when that was happening. But other than that, it was just like a couple 20-second cuts, and of course that final performance. So I don't mind the cuts as much because we did get that nice long bit at the very end, and we also saw like Angela's descent into madness over this episode. I already said what I thought about that. It just, I don't know. I feel like they're doing Angela's character, bad in this episode. Carole Tuesday are pleasant as ever, and they come up with this idea of doing this church thing. The concept of having a church be included in the last song of the show kind of plays off again that theme of like sanctuary, because it's like church is pretty famous for that. And that was nice. Amr getting deported, and he changed his name back to Amr Suleiman from Ezekiel, and he made a music video in jail or whatever. And Carole Tuesday had this nice performance. Pretty solid episode so far. We got the slightest, maybe like 15-second glimpse of Valerie Simmons saying that she's now leading in the polls, and we got like one shot of Tao being like he's now doing even more illegal stuff just to show people what he's really capable of after they, had the gall to arrest him. We're building up to something. I don't know what exactly it is, and it feels like the show is kind of, again, it's under the weight of so many different branches that it's trying to fulfill at the same time. We didn't see anything to do with Kyle this episode, the journalist. Gus and Roddy basically just exist as accessories to Carole Tuesday at this point. They have no storylines of their own. Carole Tuesday even barely have a storyline at this point. The main storylines are Valerie Simmons becoming president, Kyle trying to unearth something dirty about her, and Angela falling into madness and Tao getting arrested. All the side characters have more to do with the show than the actual main characters themselves, which can be fun if you actually like the main characters, or the side characters rather, and can relate with them in some degree. You can kind of relate with Angela. You can't really relate with Tao because he's too far above everybody else for it to be any kind of meaningful connection to him. Valerie Simmons, of course, you hate. Tuesday's brother we know little to nothing about at all. He was not developed in any way. It just feels like it's trying to do a lot at once and kind of staggering under the weight of it. So much so that every episode barely moves forward all of the plots that it has to tackle, and it only has 20 minutes to do that. It kind of feels like a very end game, kind of like Game of Thrones type scenario where they're trying to do so much with so many different plots that they kind of have to just skimp on some of them in order to get things actually working. That's what it feels like to me. Don't really have much more to say than that. This episode is already like pretty super long, I would say. That being said, that was Carole Tuesday, episode 21. Let me know what you think in the comments. Shit on me for saying that the rap was bad last week and then saying it was good this week. I genuinely thought it was good this week. Whatever. I'll take that. That's it for this week. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next episode.